Who remembers Butter Jeep? It's been a year since I broke this thing. Ruined the engine in Moab by dunking it into a pond. This episode, we're gonna drag it into the shop, start getting busy on fixing this thing. It's been down too long. All right, here's the problem. Butter Jeep's out there and it doesn't run. And it needs to be in here so I can work on it. So I got some recovery gear in here, a strap, a snatch block, and some clevises. And I think what I'm gonna do is use the Mazda to winch the Jeep in. This will go around here. Oh yeah, this is gonna look fun. Do that to there. See? It's fun. I'm already getting to play with all my 4x4 stuff. Alright, this is gonna go over here. The snatch block. On that, we'll run the winch line. We'll use the snatch block there, then we'll run the winch line from the Mazda through that, back to the Jeep, and that'll yank the Jeep in here. Alright. Next step is getting this Mazda closer to the door so that we can... Oh gosh, the exhaust leak on this one sounds terrible. I want to get the Mazda closer to the door so the winch line can make it all the way up to that snatch block in there and then back over to the Jeep. Grab my winch controller out. Ah, I found one of my favorite sweatshirts. I'll make sure that gets put back in rotation. I wonder how old these are. We'll just put them right back in there with the other snacks. It's kind of a bummer that my Mazda is not getting wheeled, it's just getting used as a tool. But at least it's getting used for something. Come on. Alright, so you take your snatch block and you open it up, put your wincher up through it, close it up, and then we'll take another clevis and connect all these things together. There we have it. That's our anchor point and our direction changer. And then we'll just drag this out to the Jeep. Alright, don't do that in real life. That's just for getting this thing into the shop. That's going in. That should start coming this way. Working just fine. That's a cool shot. We'll try that one. Alright, as long as I can keep the yellow Jeep out of the flower bed. Jeep's in the shop. I'm gonna go put the Mazda away and then we'll figure out what we're doing here. And it doesn't want to push very easy. Oh, come on. Oh, this poor old Jeep. It's had a rough life. It's had a rough life. I haven't even owned this thing that long. Like, I don't think I've hit the two-year mark with this yet. I keep looking at like Facebook memories and it hasn't popped up yet. Maybe this one's gonna be its best version yet. I just want it to be running again. Poor thing's just been sitting most of the life that I've owned it. All right, it's the next morning. Butter Jeep's in the shop, and it's time to tear into this thing and at least come up with a game plan or share with you what the game plan is already. This thing is super broken. I don't know if I've explained really what happened to this or if you saw it or what. Straight 6 4-liter locked up. I drove this thing into a pond, bent a rod, and the thing won't crank over. I pulled plugs, I did all kinds of stuff. It was on an episode of Roadkill when I killed it, and then it's been sitting for like a year and a half now. Not good, kind of bummed. This thing actually sounded terrible but ran good and made good power. I could swap in another 4-liter from a wrecking yard or just have that one rebuilt. But instead, I'm going to overcomplicate things, and we're putting a Chevy in it. 5.3 Chevy LM7 or LS swap or whatever you want to call it. This is an engine that I got in a trade. It was a package deal when I actually got the Mustang. And this is a legit parts, like pull and save or pull apart, $150 LM7 engine out of a 04 Tahoe. It looks like it may have had a rebuild at some point in time, or at least new heads put on it, but this thing looks like it got drug around at the wrecking yard with the valve covers off and the valley pan off. There's like gravel and cat litter and all sorts of nastiness going on. I didn't feel like this was the engine to just throw directly in the truck, in the Jeep. So I picked up another LS, LM7, and this one was about to go in a guy's hot rod swap project and he lost interest. So I picked this engine up for like around 700 bucks. And we're hoping that between the two of these, I've got one good one. I'm definitely planning on throwing this one in right away. Trying to figure out a couple things along the way. I'm trying to figure out if I want to put a cam in it, if I want to mess with that at all, or just throw it in stock. Holly did come on board on this one and is helping me with a bunch of products on it. I've got valve covers and coils and a Terminator X for it, some headers, and a bunch of other cool products. So stoked that Holly was able to help me out on this thing. This is not my wheelhouse. I'm not an engine guy, so it's going to be kind of a wild ride to see if I can get this thing in there and running and driving and functioning better than that 4-liter did. That's the goal. The main thing I don't want is for this Jeep to be less cool than it was. Yes, a 4-liter is a cool engine, but this one's broken. Those over there were very inexpensive, and just in stock form, I can gain like 100 horsepower just by swapping without doing much more than that. So I guess it's time to dig in, take this engine out, start figuring out the process, and this isn't going to be a like one video and done. This is going to be kind of a big process as far as getting the engine in, making sure the transmission's good, make sure these axles are still good, doing exhaust, making sure it runs and is wired properly so that it's reliable. I do not want to just like hack in an engine in 2 days and then just run around chasing problems. So let's dig into this and see if we can make Butter Jeep even better. All right, first step on all this was getting the shifter off of the transmission and sort of cleaning this thing out. It's a mess. You can see here like the seat belts have like some mold on them and stuff. It's kind of gross. Yeah. It got dunked in the water and then sat outside for the last year and a half. So spider webs and eggs and stuff in the tires and some mold in the seats and stuff. We're gonna have to do more than just an engine swap. This thing's gonna be like a bunch of cleaning and a bunch of water damage repairs. Time to do this. I've been putting it off too long. right. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been under this Jeep. Let's give it a look. This is pretty wild. This brand new axle that I put in it, paint just flaking off everywhere. Man, this thing just got absolutely trashed sitting here. The link bars are rusty. What the heck? It's like everything's gonna have to get a hand put on it. All right, let's get this, man, everything's junk. Let's get the transfer case out of here. I'll grab some tools and start pulling drive shafts and transfer case and figure out what the plans are here. Junk. I sure hope the axles and stuff aren't wasted. Let that do its thing for a while. There we go. All right, the coolant's drained. It's doing its thing over there. I've got the drive shafts, the bolts all undone, and now it's just time to pop these out. Again, it's kind of wild, like how rusty all this stuff got. I think part of this was due to the fact that I drove it down to Fred's 50th birthday party through a bunch of snowy, salt-covered roads. And then the other fact is that I dunked it underwater in Moab, and then I let it dry, obviously, but I didn't like go back and pressure wash this thing really good, and I probably should have. I might as well get the wheels off this thing. It'll make it easier when I go to put the engine in or take the engine out. I can get the vehicle lower to the ground so that the engine hoist doesn't have to work so hard. I think I'm going to get the exhaust out of the way right now. This is definitely not going to stick around once we do a V8 swap in this. So the muffler can go away. I'll probably cut the head pipe back here pretty close to the exhaust manifold. We'll start with this side. Come on out of there. All right, that should be good. That should just pop right off of that hanger. All right. Get that out of the way. Go ahead and cut this one right here. What the heck? Apparently there was still water in this. Okay. It's kind of cool being under here a year later. I guess 2 years since I actually built the rig. But I put a lot of work into this thing. Like, this transmission cross member is super cool. It's like high clearance and has urethane bushings for the mounting points on the frame, but it still utilizes a stock transmission mount in the middle. It's got all sorts of clearance and stuff for the transfer case. Pretty dope. All right, that can come out. Now we can get the transfer case off. Wiring out of the way. I think I can come down. Boom. Yeah, look at that. Transfer case out of there. Man, it's got like barnacles on the top sides of the aluminum. Sorry, Jeep. I didn't mean to hurt you so bad. All right, let's get this out of the way and start working on the transmission. Pulling that puppy out of there. That's not the right size at all. Telling you, these Jeeps can have a crazy mixture of metric or standard on them. Kind of a weird, there we go. weird generation of these vehicles. So I think we got all the bell housing bolts out, other than these really weird reverse Torx bits in the top. Oh geez, that's left right. So I gotta grab a socket for that. A reverse Torx bit. I think it's like a reverse T50. What did I use the last time I took this thing apart? Did I have Torx stuff here? Where are you? Reverse Torx T50. Is that it? Either I broke a socket or it's skipping. All right, I have to track down the right tool apparently. That's lame. All right, I got an idea. Here's that other bolt. Here's a 1/2-inch nut. It kind of fits on there. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'm gonna weld the thing all up, and then we'll back it out. Hopefully that's what is gonna work. I got so many tools out right now, it's ridiculous. All right, so I'm gonna push the nut on there with the extension, and then I'm gonna try to reach up there with my other hand and weld the nut to the bolt without welding the extension to it as well. All right. Well, that's on there. A lot of times just welding the nut on there is enough to scare the bolt into believing that it needs to come out. Let's try that. I've got the camera kind of like jammed into my sweatshirt. Alright, come off of there. Come on. What in the heck just happened? Did I just break that? Are you kidding me? Just broke the nut off that I welded on there. I welded another nut on there, and I got a little bit of a thinner wall socket, and I think it's coming off. Oh, look at that. There it is. Haha, you little bugger. Got you. There we go. Transmission is coming out. Cool. That's good. I would like to say that was easy, but that was a lot of work. Yay! It's pretty awesome. The Jeep's on the lift. The transmission transfer case are out. I did not get started on the engine, pulling out the engine yet, but we'll do that right now. It's time to start figuring this out. I'm gonna start disconnecting battery cables and get stuff out of the way, like the intake, the radiator. We'll probably just start tearing into this, get this thing all taken apart. I'm so bummed that my sweet little 4-liter inline 6 is junk. That's frustrating. Oh well, onward and upward. We'll do something cooler, right? All right, I'm gonna start yanking engine out of this. All right, Jeep's way up in there. I was able to go track down my cherry picker. It was buried under a bunch of other stuff. All the hoses and electrical are off, and I think we can lower this thing back down and get the engine out of it. This should work pretty good. Just gotta be able to choke up on it enough to get the engine out. All right. That was the motor mount bolt, and now I guess we can start lifting this thing and see if I got everything disconnected. There it is. Come on out of there. It's getting there. There it is. I'm pretty sure the engine is out of the Jeep. All right. Yes, engine's out. That's something. I guess now the work begins. Whew. I don't even really know where to start, but we'll figure it out. All right, this thing's all torn apart. I'm gonna actually hit the road today for a little bit, head up to Grind Hard Plumbing, and I think I'm doing a podcast with them, so should be pretty fun. We'll get back to the Jeep here in a little bit, but right now it's time to get out of the shop for a bit. I'm heading into North Idaho, and once again I underestimated how long of a drive it is. So I'll be half hour, 45 minutes late showing up. Sorry, Ethan and Edwin, I'll get there. I made it. Look what these guys just got. They had said they were going to buy some military surplus. Dig it. Dig that. All that stuff's blue Maverick. I like that too. Let's go see what's going on in the shop. I made it into the Grind Hard garage. What do you call this? The lair?
Just the shop.
All right.
Yeah, just call it the shop. It doesn't really have an official name.
We just went through and did a podcast. Yep. Will's building crazy contraptions like this. This is 180 horsepower Grom that doesn't have any rear ruckus.
Even less horsepower.
Jeez.
Yeah.
With no rear suspension. It's wild style.
Yep. CBR 1000 engine in a Honda Ruckus.
That's nuts.
Yeah, totally ridiculous. His other projects are all out in the shed at the moment. But
yep.
Yeah, this one's all torn apart because it's not that torn apart. I'm just redoing some wiring stuff and trying to get it all running better, get it tuned, fire it up.
This stuff's rowdy. If you're on YouTube, you've seen all of this. That's wild.
It's fairly loud.
It looks like a toy, but it feels like top fuel. That thing's so crazy. That's awesome.
And last time you were here, the chopper was just suspension.
Yeah,
I didn't have anything beyond the suspension done.
This thing's actually running and driving and steering now.
Yeah, and jumping and hill climbing.
That's wild style. Is it running right now?
The battery's not in it at the moment.
Okay. We're going to go grab some dinner, and I'm going to head back into my shop so I can do some engine work tomorrow. But thanks for having me up here. Where's your podcast at?
Sent and Bent. It's on YouTube or anywhere else you watch podcasts, listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
Whatever you do with podcasts. I'm not the podcast guy. That's Edwin. Anyway, yeah, thanks for coming up.
We're going to go get some pizza. I'm back in the shop. I spent a little bit of time cleaning up tools and stuff. Look at that. You can actually see the welder. That's cool. I think right now it's time to start chopping on this thing. I know the engine's getting swapped, so we probably need to pull the engine mounts out of this thing and clean the frame up. So let's go ahead and get some cutting and grinding out of the way before I drag more parts out. More parts just mean more stuff to step over, and I got plenty of that right now. Time to break out the old hot wrench, gas axe, torch, oxyacetylene, whatever you want to call it. We're going to cut those motor mounts off and clean the frame all up. Come on. All right, let's do this. Man, it's been too long. I haven't been cutting and grinding and welding nearly enough. The old butter Jeep's under the knife again. Did I get the thing good enough? Oh yeah. Cool. Get the other one cleaned off and start grinding. Try and get these things off of here clean without gouging the frame too much. That one should knock off. Don't burn my vent hose on the brake line. All right, moving along. All right, I'm grinding in here trying to get the motor mount, the welds off the old motor mounts. And the grinder in regular form, it won't get a bunch of this because it's kind of hitting the steering shaft, it's hitting the inner fender well, and I'm trying to like hold the brake line away. So I figured I'd show you a trick. This is regular 4.5-inch angle grinder with a flap disc. That's what I use almost all the time. But I always also keep some of these kind of old school, like normal sanding discs around. And this is why. I always flip one around backwards so that I can use the grinder upside down to try and get into tighter spots. Like this. All right, that's getting it pretty close. And basically, it's just a cool trick to be able to use the grinder from a different angle and get sort of a different perspective on getting that weld ground off of there. You want to make sure you use a regular one of those. You cannot do the flap disc just flipped around backwards because they're meant to run in one direction. And when you flip it around the other way, it's running the wrong direction and tries to just take itself apart. So, little trick. Keep some of the basic old flap discs around, or some of the old soft discs around. It's getting good now. Getting good. I have procrastinated. I've screwed around long enough. It's time to drag out the parts for this job. That's not going to fit through there, so I got to move this so that I can get that out of there. And then we can kind of go through this pile of stuff here, lay out some parts, and hopefully see if any of it fits in the Jeep. I don't know. Transmission on its way. Stay put. Let me do a quick little backstory on this. I picked up this AX15 from a guy who swapped out to an automatic transmission. He had an LS in his Jeep, and it has this old small block Chevy bell housing and then a billet adapter to go to the AX15. I bought all this thinking I was going to use that, but I actually have a different bell housing and adapter to use. So I'm really just going to scavenge the transmission out of here. I'm going to probably sell the NP231 that's got a slip yoke eliminator to help fund this project a little bit, and then I'll probably end up selling off the bell housing and adapter as well. So this should be a good sort of rebuilt transmission. I don't really know any super specifics on it, but I know that I didn't watch this transmission sink to the bottom of a pond, so I assume it's better than that one. We'll see. The transmission's looking pretty good and it's stripped down, so that's cool. The next big step is going to be the bell housing. And check this out. Right here is what we're going to be using. This is a Quick Draw brand bell housing, and it is a cast aluminum piece, all one piece, which is nice. And it goes right from the LS engine to the AX15 transmission. and then it actually ends up using a Jeep TJ clutch hydraulics. So it should be fairly straightforward. I'll probably have to do a little bit of adapting to get the TJ clutch hydraulics to work in the YJ, but it's kind of not a big deal at this point. Comes with a new clutch fork, throwout bearing, clutch alignment tool, hardware, bunch of stuff, and we'll get this all sorted out and dialed in, but right now I just want to get this thing bolted up and get my spacing and stuff right so I know if my motor mounts are going to work. All right, first fit. Let's see if this thing is gonna work. We should have a dowel pin locator there. One on the opposite side. Heck yeah, so far that looks good. Let's get this thing bolted up and then we can get the engine bolted to it. Swing the whole thing in there and see if everything lives in harmony, I guess. Come on in here. There we go. All right, let's start moving this thing around. Seems pretty even. Kinda. All right, we're getting close. The engine's over here. The transmission's about to get bolted up to it, and I wanted to show you the engine mounts that we're going to use. These are from Mountain Off-Road Enterprises, and they are an LS swap into a YJ specific. It's pretty cool. They use like a urethane bushing and sleeve, and it's all 3/16 plate. And check this out. If all goes well, they key in to this hole on the frame, and they drop in place, and then you just weld them up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the engine transmission bolted together, and we'll get this thing slung into there and see if these mounts are actually gonna be in the ballpark. Transmission, rather heavy. All right. There we go. That side went together. Piece of cake. Small block Chevy to an AX15 or LS or whatever you want to call it. Look at that thing. I love it. Oh, look at that. We are just puking oil on the ground. Neat. Ugh, jeez. That's not good. Oh man. Alright, since I'm building this in a Jeep that's already kind of done, I kind of need the transmission mount to dictate like where the engine goes, because I don't really want to end up having to like have new drive shafts made and stuff like that. So I know if the transmission crossmember stays put, the drive shafts stay put, transfer case goes right back where it's at. The only thing I really am kind of doubting that those motor mounts they sent me are gonna still just like jump right into position on those holes in the frame there. So we'll get this thing slung in there and kind of figure out how it's gonna fit. But I kind of get the feeling we're going to end up probably knocking these little buttons off on those motor mounts. That way we can scoot them forward or backward just a little bit. So let's get busy. Let's see if this is going to be easy or a giant pain in the butt. Curious if this thing is going to look giant in there and take up every inch of space, or if it's going to look small because it's 2 cylinders shorter. The other thing I want to find out eventually is if I'm am adding weight or subtracting weight. It feels, just by moving the thing around, it feels like this is lighter than the straight 6 was. Come on in here, engine. Now we're cooking. Oh yeah, there goes the transmission fluid. Let's see if maybe this goes bad or good. There we go. We'll just get this one out of here now. It is just dumping fluid out. Stop. That's enough. I'm getting it close. We got it tipped way back and it's actually dropping down into the transmission tunnel there fine. Yeah, kind of getting it. I just got to get it past the core support here a little bit and then we can start dropping the nose of it a bunch. These headers, man, holy cow, they're all over everything else. All right, let's start dropping this thing in, see if I can get it all the way down into the frame without pulling the headers off. Part of the problem is I have the straps on the manifolds or the headers, and they need to stay there because if not, the engine's going to hit the floor, you know? Probably not the best idea that I've had. All right, there we go. The engine's installed. Looks great. Nice and level. Call that a win. Oh boy, there we go. That's better. That was a joke, what I was saying. All right. We're getting close now. Let me go throw the jack under the transmission and start figuring that mess out. Oh my gosh, there's just fluid everywhere. Step 1, drain the fluid out of your transmission, unlike Dave. Let me climb under there and start seeing if I can fit this cross member in, and then I think we gotta push the engine back about 2 inches and we should be pretty close. Heck yeah, it's in there. All right, going under. Oh, how close are we? Are we even remotely in the ballpark? I feel like the engine has to come down about a mile in the front still. Wow, this transmission, the whole shooting match needs to come back 4 inches. That will be rad if it actually clears the firewall. We'll go find out. I'm getting pretty close. The engine is like, basically I have these tabs for the transmission cross member and the bushing is like right on the front side of the tab. So the whole thing needs to go back the width of that bushing, which is like 3 inches. And I do have like 3 inches of space between the firewall and the heads and things like that. The other thing that I've got going on is these motor mounts have this locating pin, and that's about 2 inches away. So in one form, if I want to use the motor mounts how they're designed to be used, I need to scoot the engine back about 2 inches, and then that will go in place. If I want to set it on the transmission cross member, which is already built, then I got to go back about 3. So I think what I'm going to do is go back 3 inches, and I'm going to cut the little nubs off of these motor mounts, and we'll dictate everything by the transmission cross member. And partly I want to do that because I won't have to modify drive shafts. I won't have to change my shifter boots and shifter sheet metal and all the locations for all that stuff. So I'm more in tune with like hammering the firewall a little bit if I have to, than I am with like changing everything underneath everything in the shifter area and drive shaft. So let's go ahead and cut those nubs off, and then I'll bolt the brackets to these motor mounts, and then we'll just kind of start scooting things back until it fits. That was easy. Pretty clean. I think I just have a little bit of sanding to do and that thing will be off of there. The engine is in place and the motor mounts are pretty close. So I'm gonna just go ahead and clamp them in place with some big vice grip C-clamps. All right, there we go. So the motor mounts are kind of clamped into place. I should be able to take the pressure off the cherry picker. I can't move the thing forward anymore anyways because we're maxed out on the boom length and crashing into the, we're not maxed on the boom length, but we're maxed out where it's at and we're crashing into the bumper. So I kind of need to just get all this off and readjust and reposition and figure out what the real next steps are. And by doing this right now, I'll be able to lift this thing up in the air and get underneath it and kind of see what is really going on and what has to happen and what doesn't have to happen. This, however, is a huge milestone. The engine is in the rig. It physically fits in place. We're doing good. I'm gonna call it a night. Thanks for watching. That's gonna be it for this Dirthead Shed. Next time you see this butter Jeep, we will be working farther along on getting this LS engine running and driving. This thing's gonna be so much fun. Now that I'm into the project, come on out of there. Now that I'm into the project, totally stoked on it. Totally stoked. It's gonna be a fun rig again. Can't wait to drive it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.